My husband's family used to make jokes about my accent. One Thanksgiving, his cousin said, "Say that again. It sounds funnier when she says it." Everyone laughed. I didn't. I got up, took my plate, and left. 2 years later, they asked me to help translate during a family crisis. I said, "Funny. It sounds better when someone else does it." Then hung up. I met Nate when I was 27. I was living in Medellin, Colombia, working as a translator for a travel company. He was from Louisville, Kentucky, and worked in construction project management. We met online through a language exchange app that eventually turned into daily messages, then video calls, and finally, real feelings. Nate visited me twice before we decided I'd move to the US. I thought we had something strong. He was patient, kind, and said he admired how hardworking I was. We got married 6 months after I moved in with him. His family was polite at first. Not warm, not cold. Just formal. His mom, Judy, would smile tight and ask me surface-level questions like how I liked the weather or if I missed Colombian food. His dad, Carl, barely spoke to me at all unless it was about sports or grilling. The cousins were louder, more talkative, but from the beginning, some of them made jokes about the way I spoke. They called it teasing. I called it what it was, mocking. Here's the thing. I speak English fluently. I've studied it since I was 10. But yes, I have an accent. I don't say everything like an American. Sometimes I use the wrong preposition, or my sentences sound formal because I think in Spanish first. But I get by fine. I've worked in 2 countries with it. My husband understood me just fine. So did my coworkers. But his family liked to act like every word I said was a punchline. It started small. Say that again, it sounds cute. That's adorable. Do you always pronounce it like that? She's like Sofia Vergara, but serious. Then came the mimicry. His cousin Brian would copy something I'd said earlier, trying to imitate my accent. His brother Mike once joked, "We should get her to read a bedtime story to us, just for the laughs." Every time the room would laugh. And every time, I'd smile like it didn't hurt. But it did. It made me feel like a joke in a room full of people who saw me as less than them. I told Nate about it one night, not in anger, just trying to explain. I said, "They laugh at the way I talk." "Not with me. At me." He brushed it off. "They're just messing around. That's how they are. It means they like you."
No, Nate.
That's how you are with them. I didn't grow up in a house where people mocked you to show love. He got defensive. Said I was too sensitive. That I needed to loosen up. That stung worse than the jokes. It was at his Aunt Cheryl's place, like always. Big house in the suburbs. About 30 people there. I made a bandeja paisa. Colombian dish with beans, rice, plantains, and pork. It took me 4 hours to prepare. When we got there, people said hi. Some sniffed the dish and said, "Oh, interesting," then moved on to the deviled eggs and ham. It didn't bother me. I was used to it by now. But while I was telling Nate's mom about a new job I was hoping to get, Brian walked by with a beer and said loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Say that again. It sounds funnier when she says it." The whole couch section burst out laughing. Nate's cousin Jess leaned on her husband, giggling. His uncle even clapped once and said, "She's a trip." I froze. Just stood there holding a napkin. I looked at Nate. He saw my face, but said nothing. No reaction. He gave me that fake smile, the one that says, "Don't make this a thing." So, I didn't. I walked to the kitchen, scraped my plate into the trash, wiped my hands, took my coat, and walked straight out the door. No drama.
No speech.
Just gone. I called an Uber and left. I didn't cry. I didn't even get angry. I felt clear. For the first time, I saw the truth. Nate came home 2 hours later. Slammed the door, a little harder than usual. "You couldn't have just held it together," he said. "They humiliated me. You let them. They were just joking. You made it a whole thing now. Everyone was asking where you went. It was awkward." I don't care if it was awkward. I'm not your entertainment. We barely talked the rest of the weekend. I slept on the couch the next night. After that, I stopped going to family events.
No verdad.
No Christmas. No 4th of July. Nothing. I told Nate I wasn't going to put myself in front of people who made me feel small. He could go alone.
He did.
At first he tried to convince me. Then he just gave up and went without me. He'd show me pictures afterward like everything was normal. I stopped pretending it didn't bother me. We became strangers with rings. I kept working, focused on getting my citizenship, started taking side gigs as a freelance interpreter for hospitals and legal services. I was good at it. Better than good. My clients respected me more than my in-laws ever did. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered out of habit. "Hi, is this Sophia?" a woman asked.
Yes.
"Who's this?" "It's Sarah, Nate's cousin." I hadn't spoken to her in almost 2 years. "Sorry to call like this. Aunt Cheryl's in the hospital. She had a stroke. It happened while she was visiting family in Colombia, like in Bogota." I didn't say anything. They don't speak any Spanish, and they're having trouble understanding what the doctors are saying. No one can figure out what's going on. "We thought maybe you could help. Just translate for us, please." There was a pause. I heard someone crying faintly in the background. I waited a second, then said calmly, "Funny. It sounds better when someone else does it." And I hung up. I blocked the number right after.
I didn't tell Nate that night.
I waited for him to bring it up. He didn't. 2 days later, he came home early from work. Threw his keys on the table. "They said you hung up on Sarah." I did.
Why?
"Why wouldn't you help?" I looked him in the eye. "Because your family thought my voice was a joke until they needed it to save their own." He opened his mouth and closed it. We haven't talked much since. After I hung up on Sarah, I expected Nate to come at me hard. He didn't. Not right away. For a few days, he walked around the house like I wasn't there. No hello. No questions. Just silence. I was used to silence by then, but this one had weight. Not just distance, resentment. Then one night, I came home from a late shift at the hospital. I walked into the kitchen, still wearing my interpreter badge, and there he was, sitting at the table with a beer and his phone. "You're really proud of yourself, huh?" he said, without looking up. I didn't answer. "You think that was brave? Hanging up on my cousin while our aunt is half dead in a hospital bed?" I dropped my bag on the counter. "I think it was honest." He stood up.
Fast.
His chair scraped hard against the tile. "She's family, Sophia. And what am I? The clown they bring out for laughs?" I was family too until I spoke. "You could have helped. That was life or death." "No," I said, sharp. "They didn't call me. They called the accent they used to mock. They didn't want me. They wanted a tool." He looked at me like I'd grown horns. "That's sick," he said. "You're sick." I walked out of the room before I could throw something. A week later, I was called into HR at work. They said someone had reported me for professional misconduct. I was confused. I hadn't missed any appointments. No one had filed complaints. But the complaint didn't come from a client. It came from Carl, Nate's dad. He had written a letter claiming I used my job as an interpreter to blackmail the family during a medical crisis. It didn't go far. My manager knew my work. She said it sounded personal and told me not to worry. But still, I sat in my car afterward for half an hour, hands shaking, just staring at the steering wheel. That's when I realized something. They weren't just angry. They were trying to punish me. Nate never told me his dad did that. I found out from a friend who works in HR who flagged the name. So I confronted him. "Did you know your dad tried to get me fired?" He looked surprised, but not that surprised. "I heard something. I didn't think he'd actually go through with it." "And you didn't think to tell me?" "What do you want me to say, Sophia?"
You spit on my family.
They're pissed. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe the audacity. They humiliated me for years. You let them. I leave one dinner early and refuse one favor, and now I'm the enemy. He didn't respond. Just picked up his keys and left. That night, I packed a suitcase and booked a room at an extended stay near the hospital. I didn't leave a note. I stayed at the extended stay motel for 2 weeks. It was quiet, clean, and came with a little kitchen. I made arepas every morning. I went to work. I answered my clients with kindness. And at night, I sat by the window with my tea and stared out at the parking lot, watching people come and go. It was lonely, but it felt safe. No one called me. Not Nate. Not anyone from his side. It was like I vanished, and no one cared enough to ask where I went. Until the emails started. She was one of Nate's cousins, the one who laughed the hardest at Brian's joke during Thanksgiving. Subject line: Please read this, Sophia. I know things got really bad between you and the family. I wanted to say I'm sorry if I ever hurt you. I didn't realize how much those jokes bothered you. I just thought we were messing around. That's no excuse. Cheryl's out of the hospital now, but she's still struggling. We needed help, and no one could understand the doctors. We panicked. I hope someday you can forgive us. Jess, I read it 3 times. And then out of nowhere, another email. This one from Cheryl's daughter, Mel. Shorter. Meaner. Guess you're proud. Aunt Cheryl had a second episode last week. We managed without you. Just so you know, your little stunt didn't break us. It just showed everyone who you really are. That one made my blood boil. I typed out a reply, deleted it, typed it again, then deleted it again. Instead, I forwarded both emails to Nate and wrote, "Your family can keep pretending I'm the villain. I'm done playing along."
He didn't respond.
But 3 days later, he showed up at my job. He didn't look mad. He looked tired. "Sophia, come on.
Can we just talk?"
5 minutes. I didn't want to make a scene, so I stepped outside with him. "You win," he said. "You got what you wanted. Everyone's talking about how cold you were, how you turned your back when they needed you." "I didn't win anything, Nate." "Then what do you want? Do you want me to apologize? Do you want them to grovel?" "I want you to understand." I stepped closer. "They never cared about me. They treated me like a toy. You let it happen. And the one time I said no, suddenly I'm a monster." He stared at the sidewalk.
Jess emailed me. I said. Mel too.
One was sorry. One blamed me for everything. Guess which one I respected more?
He didn't speak.
"And your dad? Trying to get me fired." I shook my head. "That's not a family. That's a mob." Then Nate said something I didn't expect. "You think my family's bad? You haven't met yours lately." I froze. What's that supposed to mean? He pulled out his phone, opened a message, showed me a screenshot of a post on Facebook. It was from my cousin Camila, one I hadn't spoken to in years. She'd written a long post in Spanish about how I'd turned into a gringa, how I abandoned the family for an American life, how I refused to help my husband's sick aunt because I was full of pride. "How did she even find out?" I asked. He shrugged. "Apparently someone sent her a video." "What video?" He pulled up a clip on his phone, grainy but clear. Me, standing in the hospital lobby a few minutes ago, arguing with Nate. Someone had filmed it from across the room, posted it with a caption in Spanish, "This is what happens when pride goes to your head." I felt like my chest caved in. They'd reached across countries, across continents, across languages. Now my family was turning on me too. I didn't say a word to Nate after I saw the video. I turned around, walked back inside the hospital, and left him standing there in the parking lot. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely swipe my badge to get back in. That night, I sat in the motel room and stared at the ceiling for hours. The betrayal was heavy, not just from his family but from mine. My own cousin, who I hadn't spoken to in years, had joined in, judged me from another country, all based on a twisted story, a single moment taken out of context. I had spent my life helping others communicate, bridging gaps, making people understand each other. And yet, here I was, misunderstood by both sides. That night, I made a choice. I made a video. Just me, sitting at the motel desk.
No mock-up.
No fancy background. Just truth. I spoke in English and Spanish back and forth, explaining everything. The years of mockery. The Thanksgiving humiliation. How Nate said nothing. How they all laughed at my accent until they needed it. I talked about the call from Sarah and exactly what I said. I admitted it. Yes, I hung up. Yes, I walked away. And no, I don't regret it. I even addressed my cousin Camila. You say I forgot where I came from? You're right. I forgot what it's like to be surrounded by people who only love you when you're useful. I posted the video on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I sent it directly to Camila. I tagged Nate. I tagged the family. Then I turned off my phone and went to sleep. The next morning, I had over 300 messages. Some were hate. Some were apologies. Some were strangers telling me they'd gone through the same thing. Jess messaged me again. Said she cried watching it. Said she didn't know how bad it had gotten. Camila sent back a single line. We were raised to put family first. You just forgot which family. I replied, family is who shows up when you're down, not who kicks you and calls it discipline. Then I blocked her. I watched her video. I didn't recognize the woman in it. She's strong, angry,
Brave.
too bad I never made her feel that way when it mattered. That was the last I ever heard from him. A week later, I filed for divorce. 2 months after that, I moved to Chicago for a new job, head interpreter for a large hospital system. They value me there. My voice, my knowledge, my story. I'm not proud of everything I did. I could have picked up the phone and helped just once and walked away after. But something in me broke that night at Thanksgiving. When they laughed and my own husband smiled along with them, something inside me shut down. The part that gave people grace when they didn't deserve it. Maybe I should have been better. Maybe they should have too. But I know this. I will never sit at a table where I'm the punchline again. I speak with an accent. It tells you where I come from. But how I speak, that tells you who I am. And now I speak for myself.